Swing and a drive.
Welcome to Red, White, and Blue Jays, the podcast home of Blue Jays Fans UK, a group connecting Blue Jays fans around the UK and beyond, and telling their story. And now, here's the host of Red, White, and Blue Jays, Steve Hunter.
Hi guys, welcome to another edition of Red, White and Blue Jays. Thank you so much for all the feedback that you're giving over the various interviews that we're doing. And what I love doing on this pod is catching up with people from all sorts of walks of life and different connections that I've made over the years of following the Jays. And I'm really thrilled today to catch up with somebody that I've spoken to quite a bit, but we sort of lost touch a little bit over a little period of time, and just through a connection with Elizabeth, who helps us with our live pods, reminded me of Rhonda. And so Rhonda and I caught up again, and I'm really thrilled, Rhonda, that you've got a bit of time this afternoon for you, evening here, to catch up. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really, really well. Really pleased to finally put a face to the Twitter handle and the Facebook profile and all that sort of stuff. Because, you know, when you meet people across social media, it's not quite the same, is it, as actually speaking to somebody face to face and hearing a little bit about their story.
Absolutely.
Now, part of your connection with us, and obviously we are primarily about a UK group, but we have lots of friends across the world, but certainly a lot into Canada for obvious reasons. You first connected with me, and I think it was probably on Twitter, because you were based here in the UK. Now, just as a sort of bit of introduction to you and your story, can you just give us a little bit of a backdrop in terms of where you are at the moment, how you came to coming to the UK, all of that sort of thing? That would be really helpful.
Sure. So I worked for a very long time for a big global corporation, and a few years ago they got bought out, and so they offered me a very nice severance package to just go away. So I chose to go back to school instead of finding another job, and I went back to school, and after doing an undergraduate degree at the University of Toronto, I decided I wasn't quite finished, so I applied to do a graduate program. And I ended up getting accepted to the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. Nice. And that's how I ended up living in Scotland through a pandemic.
Amazing. So what were you studying? What's the course that you're doing?
So the course I did at the University of St. Andrews was a master's in Romantic and Victorian Studies. So basically, I am an old book nerd.
Fantastic. You would get on with my wife brilliantly. She loves all that sort of stuff. I mean the opportunity, let's just go back to the obviously leaving your corporate world. I mean, that must have been quite a moment for you to think, here I am, I have a decision, I guess, in life to make in terms of, do I just carry on getting on the treadmill and doing the work thing, or sort of jumping off that, and I guess running after a passion that you had. How difficult was that to do?
Well, it took a little bit of a step in between. So I left my job in 2015, and I actually went and spent a few months in Italy and just traveled around Italy and relaxed and took some time off because I had worked for this company for 27 years. Wow. So I took a bit of a break. And then when I came back to Canada, another company out on the West Coast had actually headhunted me and was looking to move me out to Vancouver to do some work for them. And I wasn't really sure about it. I didn't really know if I wanted to do it or not, but the rest of my family live on Vancouver Island. So my parents are there, my brother and his family. And I thought, if a company wants to pay to move me to Vancouver, closer to my family, who I didn't get to see a whole lot, the parents are getting older, and, my nieces were getting older, and I hadn't spent much time with them. So I thought, let's make the move and see how it goes. It didn't go very well, obviously, because I lasted just over a year with that company. But it was the step that I needed for me to realize that I needed to get off the corporate wheel and go and do something different. So it was really the catalyst that said, change the path, do something different now. And so I thought, I'm just going to apply to programs. And if I get accepted, then that's the universe telling me that I'm on the right path. Sure. And I was accepted to all 5 universities that I had applied to. Of course, they were all back in Ontario because I missed being in Ontario where I had lived for most of my adult life. So I ended up going to the University of Toronto. And then while I was going to school at the University of Toronto, that's when I met Elizabeth, because that's when I actually started working with Jay's Care at the baseball games. And that's how I met Elizabeth.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in Vancouver? Is that your home city?
No, I actually grew up about 2 hours northwest of Toronto in a very tiny town of 2,000 people. So yeah, my dad was in the Canadian military when I was very young, but he retired when I was about 6, and we ended up living in this very small town, just kind of a couple hours northwest of Toronto, sort of around London, Ontario, kind of between London and Windsor and Toronto, sort of in that little triangle.
Yep. Know it well. Been to London, been to Windsor, so done the trip down through southern Ontario across to Chicago. That's where we were heading. So I live in London now. Right. Okay. I was going to say whereabouts in Ontario you are. Okay. So grew up in Ontario. Family have obviously relocated out to Vancouver, which of course is other side of the country. And in fact, somewhere I'm going this year for the first time. So I'm looking forward to going out west. I've not been to that part of Canada.
You will love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Everybody tells me that it's very lovely, very expensive. Great place to hang out.
And that's coming from somebody who actually lived in Toronto for most of her life. Vancouver is very expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're doing the drive from Vancouver across to Calgary up through the Rockies and stuff. So really looking forward to that and seeing a different part of your country. Back in Ontario though, so you've applied, you're at the University of Toronto. What was that culture shock like, going back into the classroom, as it were, after all those years in corporate world?
Yeah, it was, especially going into something so completely different. So in my corporate life, I was doing a lot of data analytics. I worked in supply chain. So I did a lot of data analytics and forecasting and a lot of traveling and training and development and project management. And now all of a sudden, I'm spending my days reading 1,000-page long Dickens novels. This is what my life had become. I thought it was going to be a much more difficult transition than it actually was. I was really concerned about doing an undergraduate degree surrounded by a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds.
Sure.
But honestly, and I'm going to call them the kids, and I know that that's, whatever. But the kids that I was in class with were absolutely brilliant. Very smart, very welcoming, very excited to hear the perspectives from somebody who'd lived a different lifestyle than they had and had a different range of experience. So I made some very good friends. I did meet some other mature students along the way in some of my classes and made some friends through that. So it was actually really, it felt like I was doing something completely new, but it just was, I felt kind of re-energized and recharged. So, after you spend so many years going into an office and doing the same thing, it starts to become routine and there's no excitement, there's nothing new. And this was going into a classroom every day and really challenging myself to think differently, to read things in a different way, having conversations with 19-year-olds about feminism and colonization and all of these things really challenged me as a middle-aged white woman to think differently about what I was reading. And it was really exciting and energizing. And I think that's why when I finished that degree, I wanted to continue on, because I hadn't learned everything I wanted to learn. I hadn't gotten everything out of it that I wanted to. So that's why I did the master's, the graduate degree at St. Andrews.
Yeah. So was your undergraduate degree and your master's, were they in essentially the same subject, or did you specialize when you went to master's?
At U of T, I did an undergrad in English literature.
Okay.
And then at St. Andrews, I did a master's in specifically Romantic and Victorian literature. So
sure.
You know, I like the old stuff, give me Jane Austen or the Brontes or Dickens and I'm happy.
Yeah.
So
yes. Yeah, you need to come down to our neck of the woods. So we're not a million miles from Bath, which of course Jane Austen was famously therefore, and Winchester as well is just a little way the other way. So yeah, we've got a couple of cities near us that are very Jane Austen related.
Yeah.
So your move to Scotland, did you come because they offered the course and you just felt St. Andrews, what a place to study, first off. I mean, incredible university. And I've already spoken to somebody else, Hannah, who's doing her PhD in chemistry up there. And famously, of course, we've had some royals run through St. Andrews.
Yes.
Yeah, so lots of connections with the university in terms of Jays fans. What was the carrot for you to go to St. Andrews, bar anything else?
Yeah, part of it was the course they were offering. So a number of the other universities that I had applied to didn't offer a master's program that was so sort of time specific. You could do master's programs in English literature more broadly, but St. Andrews was one of the very few that offered sort of that Romantic Victorian era that I was so interested in. So that was one of the reasons, but really I think the biggest reason was I just wanted an opportunity to go and live in Scotland for a little while. And it was a good way to get a visa to be able to go and live. So
yeah. Had you been before?
I had not been to Well, no, I hadn't been to Scotland previously. I spend a lot of time in England. I have a very good friend that lives sort of in the Reading, Oxford area.
Okay. Yep.
She lives in a very small village, and we've been friends. She worked over here in Canada for a few years, and we've been friends for about 20 years. So we take turns visiting each other. I come over to the UK or she comes to Canada. So I had done a lot of travel through England in particular, but hadn't really done any time in Scotland. And I did one of those ancestry DNA tests. I knew that our family, just look at me, I knew our family was from the British Isles originally, sure. But I didn't realize how much of our ancestry was actually Scottish.
Right.
So I wanted to, Scotland's always been a place that I wanted to go and visit and just hadn't really gone north of the border. So I thought, St. Andrews would be a nice place to live. It's a nice town. It's not too big. If you've got to be in a global pandemic, it's probably a nice place to ride things out.
Yeah. So, yeah, I get. Presumably the pandemic hadn't really kicked in terms of lockdown by the time you were here prior to lockdown, were you?
No, I wasn't. I came in right in the middle of lockdown. So I moved over in August of 2020.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah.
So it was a little bit touch and go as to whether or not I was actually going to get over there for classes, because a lot of the visa offices and the government offices were closed and things were backlogged. And the visa offices opened the beginning of August, and I was able to get everything finalized. So when I moved over, I had to do the full 14 days quarantined, not being able to see anybody, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was, I think we had about 3 classes in person and the rest of all of my course was online. But the interesting thing was, out of the 12 people that were in my course, pretty much all of us were actually in St. Andrews, despite the fact that pretty much all of us were from North America.
Ah,
So yeah,
wow.
all of the American girls that that I studied with over there, they all resided in St. Andrews as well. So yeah, we made the best of it.
Sure.
Lots of outdoor gatherings and hanging out in the quad and walking
Yeah.
the beaches and that kind of
Yep.
thing. So
Any rounds of golf while you there?
no, unfortunately not. I'm not the best golfer in the world. I believe the word is duffer.
That's a very English word or expression. Yeah, very good. Or British.
Yeah, my dad is a real golfer, so needless to say, my dad is quite disappointed that I have returned to Canada from St. Andrews, especially with the Open happening there this summer.
Indeed.
He was really hoping to have free accommodation to be able to go to the Open, but
yeah,
unfortunately not. So no, I did walk the course a few times during the winter and stuff when people weren't playing. It's a beautiful course.
Yeah.
So I did the walks. As Mark Twain said, golf is just a good walk ruined. So I just did the walk.
Yeah, no, it is a beautiful course, and of course it's quite iconic as it's coming up that 18th hole. Back up towards
I do have the picture of me coming across the little bridge. So.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, excellent. Well done. I mean, what an adventure for you. How did you find the separation from your home nation living away? Did you miss Canada when you were here? Were you pleased to be heading back, or would you have liked to have stayed a bit longer?
I think it was a bit of an odd situation for me because we were in a pandemic. So even if I had been home in Canada, I wouldn't have been able to travel to see my family. I was still doing Zoom drinks with friends back in Canada and those types of things. So I think there was a bit of a difference because I wouldn't have been able to do anything differently in Canada that I was able to do in Scotland with my friends in Canada.
Yeah.
So I didn't really miss it. And I've done a lot of travel and a lot of living abroad for work over the years. I lived in Taiwan for a year. I've been back and forth to Chicago every other week for 3 years. So, I'm kind of used to not being kind of settled. So yeah, I didn't, other than the time zone difference in trying to stay connected with people.
Welcome to our world.
Yes, I know. And I was doing a little bit of work for a company back in Canada, a little bit of consulting. So I occasionally would have, the 10 p.m. phone call with clients and those types of things. But no, I absolutely loved my time in Scotland. I didn't really want to come back. Unfortunately, my visa had run out because I had a student visa. I had thought about actually applying to do another master's program in Scotland. So I'm currently doing another master's program back here in London. So I'm still doing my education.
Well done.
And so I had thought about doing another program back in the UK, but unfortunately international student fees are slightly outrageous. So
they totally are. We looked, my daughter did chemistry at Bath University, but there was at one point she was looking at Toronto in terms of coming across, but just like you, the international fees student, it's just like, we can't do that, I'm afraid. There's just not an option available to us. It's very, very expensive. Interestingly, the first lady or the first episode I did on this pod with a young lady called Meg, who's from Ontario, and she's literally just moved to Scotland. You may know Meg through Twitter and stuff, but she's just going through all that sort of getting acclimatized to the Scottish ways and accents and cultures and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I've been following her on Twitter as well and following her adventures. And I know she was in Edinburgh last week and was getting her first views of Edinburgh, and she's learning how to understand the Glaswegians.
I can't understand the Glaswegians.
No, neither can I. I have a great uncle who was from Glasgow, and I don't think I ever understood a word he said my entire life. Neither did my father. We just and that's coming from a family the majority of my family comes from the Canadian East Coast. So they already have a bit of that sort of
Yes, they do.
maritime accent.
They do. Yeah, they have. I was watching a program some months ago, and it was on spectacular hotels around the world, and there's this hotel in Newfoundland which is literally right out on a rock. It's almost the furthest east you could go, and they were interviewing a couple of sisters, I think I remember, who were working in this hotel, and their accent was the most weird thing I'd ever heard, because it was a bit Canadian, as you say, it was a bit Scottish, but it was also Devon is a county just down the coast from us here, and it was very Devonian. So there was some very Devonian words, and it was just this real mix of dialects. It was very strange.
It's a very strange, and depending on where you go, some of it is more Scottish, where other areas are a little bit more Irish.
Sure.
So there's this very strange mix of Scottish, Irish, Canadian, and then you get into New Brunswick and you start to throw in a lot of the French from Acadia, right? So it's very odd mix that goes on the East Coast, but I think that's one of the reasons that I was actually able to pick up on the Scottish accent quite easily. Not so much in Glasgow, but in the rest of Scotland, I didn't really seem to have that much of a problem.
No, actually, the Scottish accent generally is lovely. I love the Scottish accent. I think it is just the Glaswegians are so sharp and so quick. And
it's the speed,
it's the speed, it's the speed, and they're using slightly different words to explain something that means something to them locally. So if somebody like me going in or you going in, I don't know what that means. So even though they're speaking our language, it's it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
Right. We are here really to talk about baseball, but it's lovely to get just a feel for you and your travels and what you've been about. So let's just rewind the clock then. What was your earliest memory then of going to see the Jays play?
Well, I do remember the 1985 season.
Okay.
I don't think we never went to see baseball games live, but we watched a lot of baseball on TV. I have a younger brother, and that was the one thing that my father, my brother, and I all connected on was sports.
Right.
So Toronto Blue Jays, Toronto Maple Leafs, thus the basable caps in the background here.
Yeah, I was going to talk about them.
The Raptors are in the middle, but they didn't exist back then. So it was one of those, the Blue Jays was one of those things that was sort of a family tradition for us. We always watched the Blue Jays right from 77 when they first started. They were always kind of there in our family. Yeah. I think the first season that 85, I remember the 85 season, and I remember a lot of the players from the 85 season, but I think the first season that really stuck with me was 92.
Yeah.
I had just moved to Toronto in 1990.
Okay.
And so that first run in 92, when we won the World Series, I had gone to a few games with friends from work and that kind of thing. So the company that I worked for was a major sponsor of the Toronto Blue Jays. So we had a box, we had a corporate box and those types of things to take our clients to, but I do remember
where in the ballpark was the box? Was it behind home plate or was it in the outfield?
No, it was off on the side. Trying to remember if it was left field or right field. I don't remember if it was left. I think it was, I want to say it was left field.
Yeah.
But quite out in the outfield.
Yeah.
But still good enough that you got a great view, and it's always nice to be pampered when you watch a baseball game. So.
Oh yeah.
So I remember going and seeing a few games that year. And then I do remember the night we won the World Series, because where I lived in downtown Toronto completely erupted into a spontaneous parade on Yonge Street. And there was a million of us out on Yonge Street that night. And I remember that. I remember going out and being part of that crowd. So that was
what was that like? Because obviously in terms of the Jays, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about your parents, or perhaps your dad more, in terms of his love of the sport prior to the Jays being in existence. Did he have an allegiance to another team before the Jays came along, or was it?
No. I think it was more myself and my brother that became fans, and my dad became a fan because his kids were fans.
Sure.
So I had actually started playing softball when I was about 7 years old. So I had always been playing the game. And of course, as a girl, I had to play softball. I wasn't allowed to play baseball. But I had been playing since, I think I started t-ball at the age of 6 and went right into softball at the age of 7, played right into my adult years. We won our division championship one year when I was about 15, made the newspaper, got to ride on the back of the fire truck with the sirens going, the whole thing. So that was softball. Baseball was always kind of, that was my sport. My brother played hockey. Shocking. So, when the Jays came along, that was kind of the professional sport that Dad and I could bond over, because Sean and Dad, well, I also am a huge hockey fan, but it was the boys had hockey and I had baseball. So that was kind of our connection. It still is today. Every time I talk to my dad, the first thing we talk about is, how are the Jays doing?
Brilliant. I love that. I love that sort of family dynamic. We've got it with our kids that, they're all quite sporty, but they have certain conversations that just click with one child that doesn't click with another. And it sounds like you're very, very similar. So you're celebrating, sorry, I interrupted you, but you're celebrating out in Young Street. What was that moment like? First World Series for this team, was what, 15 years or so into their existence?
And I was in my early 20s. And we're talking about somebody who moved from a town of 2,000 people to Toronto. So now standing out on a street 2 years after moving there with 1 million people around, I remember it being really loud, but just really joyful. I don't recall there being any trouble. I know that, the police were out in full force, but they weren't doing anything because people were we were so happy that there wasn't fighting. It was just people walking, cars, not even moving up, going up and down the street, but just honking their horns, and, Toronto Blue Jays flags flying. And it was just one of those things where I just stepped out for a few minutes just to kind of soak it in, because it was like, this is something we hadn't seen in Toronto since 1967.
Don't mention the year.
As an Englishman, you understand our pain.
I do. I certainly do. Yeah.
So it was an amazing thing to be part of. And then shortly after that, because our company was a major sponsor of the team, we actually had a barbecue at our office, and they brought the World Series trophy up, and a bunch of the players came along and signed autographs and that kind of thing. Wow. So
have you got a photo with the World Series trophy?
I do have a picture of myself with the World Series trophy standing beside Dwayne Ward with his giant World Series ring on. Yeah.
Can you send that to me? And then what we'll do
I will see if I can find it.
Yeah, if you can find it, we'll put it on the video of this, because that would be so cool for people to see. That's amazing.
Yeah, I have pictures of me with the World Series trophy. And I had the opportunity to meet some of the players. So I got to meet people like Pat Borders, and Tom Henke and those guys. So it's one of those things. I have autographs from a lot of them. In 93, when they came back in 93, I was actually on crutches because I had hurt myself playing baseball. and so I have a set of crutches somewhere that has autographs from Dave Winfield and Pat Borders and Kelly Gruber. And
no way. That's amazing. I mean, what a unique bit of memorabilia. I don't
Yeah.
suppose there's many people out there with crutches that have got those guys' signatures on them.
Probably not, no.
No, that's fantastic. And the 93 series obviously was famously won with Joe Carter's home run. How was that moment different to winning it the first time round? Was the sort of expectation that particular year in 93 that they would do back to back? Can you remember what the thinking was?
I'm trying to remember if we actually thought that they would go back to back. I don't think there was ever, at the beginning of the season, I don't recall there ever being sort of that anticipation or that expectation. But again, that was a long time ago and my memories are vague. But I do remember the same level of excitement around the playoffs. I remember watching that call when Joe hit the home run. I was actually, as sad as it is, I was actually at an event where we were supposed to be focusing on a couple of people who were having a little event. They were getting married. And we ended up wheeling in TVs into the wedding reception because otherwise nobody was going to go to the wedding reception. It was basically what had happened. So
did they not foresee that when they were doing their wedding planning, that on the day of their wedding that this event might not be taking place?
Well, I don't know if you can actually anticipate. A lot of people plan their weddings, a year out and those types of things. And you never know what the schedule is going to look like. And
of course.
So, but I remember gathering around the TV set with a bunch of people and watching Joe Carter touch them all as he rounded the bases. So
and that, again, that was a massive moment for the ball club, going back to back. Not often that is achieved. I remember, because my first visit was in 94, so I was the year after those two World Series. And certainly my recollection of my first visit into Toronto and seeing the Jays play was very much that they were still a competing team. Obviously, the 94 was a washout in terms of the strike. And, I only just scraped in just before they went on strike, actually, to see them play. But even at that point, it was pretty much the same roster as had won the World Series the year before. The Sky Dome was packed full of people. Summer's evening, just fell in love with the club, fell in love with the city. But I think, there was clearly an expectation that team could still do something, even into that third year, if you like. And then, of course, everything changed rather dramatically through the rest of 94 and quite a way into 95 and so on. So if we wind the clock forward, Rhonda, what was the next sort of major memory for you for the Jays? Would it have been sort of the 2015-16? I mean, are we really talking all those years between? Because there wasn't a lot of success.
There wasn't a lot of joy in those years in between. I always watched the Jays. There was always somebody to cheer for, whether it was Delgado or, there was always something interesting happening with the team, even if the team wasn't really doing that well. So I did watch the teams through those years. I think about I'm trying to remember when the first time it was, 2014, maybe 2013, I don't remember. A friend and I decided that we were going to go to Florida during spring training.
Okay.
And so we decided that for spring training, we were going to get tickets for a couple of Jays games in Dunedin. We were going to go and stay in Clearwater for a week and just take our break. And so we did that the first year, and we stayed in Clearwater, and we got a couple of games over in Dunedin. And we had an absolute blast. Although we did realize that staying in Clearwater and going to baseball games in Dunedin was a terrible idea because the traffic is horrendous on the causeway. Yeah, yeah, it's an awful drive.
Right.
So the following year, we decided we were going to do it again. We had so much fun doing it that we were going to do it again. Only that time we decided we were going to stay on the other side of the causeway. So we were going to stay closer to Dunedin. And we stayed in a place called Tarpon Springs, which was fine. But still, we had to find ways to get back and forth to Dunedin. So by the third year, we decided we were just going to stay right in Dunedin. So since then, and we've done this every year. In fact, our last trip down for spring training was February of 2020, right before everything went into lockdown. So we had just returned back from Dunedin when they started to close all the borders. So we've been doing it every year. We go down, we stay in a hotel right in Dunedin, right in the old downtown part of the town, walking distance to the ballpark. So we've been doing that for a long time now. And every year it's just the two of us go down together and have some fun. And we go to a few ball games. We've ventured out a little bit. We've now been over to Steinbrenner Field a couple of times to see the Jays play the Yankees over at Steinbrenner. So we've done that a couple of times. And then one year we decided, she was at a charity event and one of the silent auction prizes was a VIP trip to spring training. So basically the trip that they take all of the leadership of the corporate sponsors on. So like, the president of WestJet, those types of things. And so we decided that we would bid on it up to, what it would normally cost us to do our spring training trip. And we ended up winning it for less than what we had paid for what we normally would pay. Cause this was after the 2016 season. So this was kind of, we were on the slide back down again and people were kind of not as interested. So we did the VIP trip, which was one of the most fascinating things I've ever done. We had a chartered plane from Toronto down to Tampa, WestJet, obviously, in which the CEO of WestJet actually served the coffee service on the flight, which was a lot of fun. And we got to do fantasy baseball camp, and we got to go to a dinner with some of the players and a bunch of the broadcasters. So got to meet people like Buck and Arash Madani and, a bunch of those people. And as well, we got to have dinner, and at our table, we had the lovely Tim Meza at our table for dinner. And he was just absolutely fantastic to talk to, a very down-to-earth, humble, just genuinely nice person. If you look on my Twitter, you will see me with Randall Gritchick. Of course, because, as a female who doesn't want to have their picture taken with Randall Gritchick, and a picture of me with Anthony Alford, also a lovely gentleman. And I believe there's a picture at some point, actually, it's with me and Randall Gritchick, but Mike Wilner is photobombing in the background.
Of course.
So it was a fascinating trip. We actually got the VIP treatment from Tampa. They put us on the coach, and we had a police escort from Tampa into Clearwater, where we were staying, so that they could get the bus full of all of these executives to their hotel as quickly as possible. I've never had a police escort anywhere before. That was fascinating. It was a lot of fun. And we got to be coached by the Alomars. So Sandy Alomar Sr. and a lot of fun.
I mean, that's almost a trip of a lifetime, isn't it, for a Jays fan to be able to do something like I'm very jealous. Just as you're talking, I think, oh my goodness, that is, it's good enough, because everybody tells me that spring training is an amazing trip to do, because it's obviously a lot smaller than being at in Toronto, but the access to the players and it's obviously much more relaxed in terms of what's going on. It sounds like a great trip, but then to do something like that, what a privilege.
And we did it, and then we were like, okay, and now we can go back to doing spring training our way. which is much more relaxed and not as scheduled. You know, we would rock up to the ballpark and then hang out and watch batting practice and take pictures and try to get autographs with all the rest of the children. You know,
absolutely.
So, you know, and we have some great photos over the years. We've got pictures of, you know, my friend with John Gibbons, and Joe Biagini, and just, you know, a lot of these guys that, you know, some of them did make it into the big leagues, some of them didn't. You get to meet some of the young kids that you may never see play again. So yeah, spring training is a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah. What's your prized autograph that you've got from your spring training visits?
I'm trying to think. It's not from my spring training, but I do have an autographed baseball from Joe Carter.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, which I love. I'm trying to think who else I've got. You know, I've gotten a lot of them over the years. So I have Carlos Delgado, who I really like. I think probably John Gibbons. Getting his, because he autographed the top of a baseball cap for us. Wow. Which and he's, you know, he's a very fun guy. As you know, as
it comes across,
as rowdy as he can get in the dugout. He's actually a really nice guy. Joe Biagini obviously is quite funny. We have a lot of fun with him. Trying to think who else from spring training. We've got a lot. We got Russell Martin one year. I think one of my favorites was probably R.A. Dickey. Yeah.
Because he must have been, I think in 2013 was the first time I brought my family out. And he'd just been signed. And because in 2013, there was the big hope that was the year that they were going to win the World Series. And they fell short very quickly. I think even by about this time of the year in April, it was just like, no, it's not happening this year. But Dickey was obviously the big name that had been, or one of the big names that had been brought in that particular season.
I loved watching him pitch. I love a knuckleballer. So
yeah, it's just so uniquely different, isn't it, to any? And Dickey's just a fantastic bloke. I mean, he comes across as somebody, again, very genuine. Really like the guy, like what he says.
Have you read his book?
Yeah.
I very much appreciated his book. It made you really think about, you know, what he had to do to actually get to the position he was in.
Humble man. Brilliant. Okay, well, beyond spring training, let's just dip into your 50-50 world with Elizabeth. So how long had you been serving in that role or working in that role?
So I did it for 2 years. So the first summer that I was back in Toronto, when I had gone back to school, I decided I wanted something. I was taking classes through the summer, but I wanted something that would occupy my time. And I figured instead of spending all my money buying tickets to go to baseball games, I would let them pay me to go to baseball games. So I signed up to do 50-50. And it was, for me, it was more about just getting to go to the baseball games and doing some fundraising for a really good charity and that kind of thing. And I actually, Elizabeth and I met because I think we were leaving training together, or we were leaving one of the first games, walking out at the same time, and we were walking to the subway, and we realized that we lived 2 subway stops away from each other. So then we just started traveling back and forth to the games together, and we became really good friends just from traveling back and forth on the subway together during the games. So I did the first year, which would have been 2017 would have been the first year, because prior to that I actually had a ticket package that I had for, I had a 20 game pack or something that I had for a number of years. So I had previously been going to the games. Even when I lived in Vancouver, I was flying home back to Toronto pretty regularly to go to games. So, you know, because you can't miss a Canada Day.
No, of course.
So, so it would have been 2017 season would be the 2017, maybe 2018 was the first season I worked. Yeah, it must have been 2018 was the first season that I worked with Elizabeth and the 50-50 team. And yeah, I had a great year that year. It's fantastic to be able to go and do fundraising and meet other fans and talk about baseball and even meet fans from other teams, even the Yankees fans. I know, but
yeah,
it's one of those things where you meet the Yankees fans, and the one thing you have in common with the Yankees fan is the hatred of the Bo Sox. Sure. Right. And then you meet the Bo Sox fans, and one thing you have in common is the hatred of the Yankees. So there's always something to connect to.
Always a silver lining. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I did it. I did that for the first year. And then the second year, so 2019, I would have, I worked 50-50 again. And then 2020, I was signed up to work, but obviously the season was canceled.
Yeah.
And then last summer, again, there was nobody in the ballpark, but I was living in Scotland at the time. So, and unfortunately now I'm in London. It's a little bit too far to travel back and forth regularly. It's just over 2-hour drive. So it's a little bit too far to go back and forth regularly.
And I think did you do a couple of Winterfests as well through that time? Yeah.
Yes, we did. We did a couple of Winterfests as well, and have some very interesting stories. Did Elizabeth tell you her story about us meeting Kevin Smith's father?
Yes. She told me off camera, as it were. Yes, that was a great story. Anybody listening in, they're all going to be wondering, what are we talking about? And perhaps we'll let Elizabeth tell that one day. But that was a moment, certainly. Yeah. Okay, let's just talk then a little bit about where we are today in terms of the Jays and excitement for 2022. Where's your barometer in terms of where you think the Jays are going to end up this season?
I am always ever the optimist. My father is ever the pessimist, so it's always a fun conversation between the two of us.
Okay.
I like to focus on the positives of the things that are happening. I think, although we're sitting behind the Yankees right now, if you take a look at who we've played versus who they've played at the beginning of the season, I think we're in a much better position than what the standings are currently showing.
Sure.
I'm very happy that we don't have to see Houston anymore this year.
Yep.
I'm very happy of that. I think we're going to finish as long as everyone stays healthy, knock on wood. I think this might be our year to at least finish top of the American League, which in itself is a feat considering who we have in our division.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's going to be a battle all year, specifically between us and the Yankees. I haven't really seen a whole lot come out of Tampa at this point.
No, they've been a little bit quiet, haven't they?
Yeah, and Boston's been having a bit of a rough go of it as well. So I think it's going to be a battle between the Jays and the Yankees, kind of for top spot. But I definitely, if we don't make the playoffs by finishing first, definitely a wild card position.
Yeah.
I think this year looks to be a very good year for us. I think all of the pieces are truly coming together. I think the addition of Chapman this year on the hot corner is a great thing for us. Third base has been a bit of a challenge since Donaldson left, so it's nice to have Chapman in there. I think Vladdy at first base, best move they could have done with him. He's a very good first baseman. I like Espinal at second. He's doing a really good job. Bo's still Bo.
Come on, let's have that glass half full rather than half empty.
Yeah,
Bo.
I think Bo is. I think his defense is improving. It's interesting. I can see some of the things he's doing on field this year. You can tell that he was training with Tulowitzki in the off season.
Yeah.
Because he's a lot of his actions are really mimicking kind of the way that Tulowitzki played shortstop.
Sure.
So yeah, and I think he actually does better when he kind of plays that Tulo style of shortstop, the on the move catch and throw, rather than the having time to stop and think about where he needs to throw it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think there's just a lot of room for him to continue to grow.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to see Teoscar back because Vladdy needs that protection in the batting order. But I think they're saying he's hopefully going to be back this week.
Yeah, I think that he's done some live.
So.
Yeah, done some live batting, hasn't he? I think all three of them who've been out in terms of Ryu, Teoscar, and Danny Jansen.
Yeah.
I think they're all.
Yeah, I feel bad for Danny because he started off so strong this season too. He actually had his offense game going.
Yeah.
So I felt really bad for him. I hope he comes back and can kind of pick up where he started the season.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
no, I think
generally excited. I think we can put that into the excited column. Definitely.
Yeah. I'm excited for this team. They're a fun team to watch. I would prefer if there weren't so many one-run games because they're a bit stressful. But you know, you look at it and you say these are the games last year that they were losing by one run, not winning by one run. So
absolutely, yeah. Haven't lost the series yet. Obviously, drew the one against the Yankees.
Tonight we got Manoa, so hopefully this will, you know, we haven't lost 2 games in a row yet this season either, so hopefully Manoa will keep that going for us.
Yeah, I mean there is, I think when you sort of take a step back and take the emotion out of it in terms of, you know, every game we watch, we want them to win, of course. The reality is they're not going to win every game. So I think, as you say, the opposition that they've had to start the season off compared to other teams, I'm really happy where they're at right now. I think you know, we can just say, guys, yeah, and they've also had to contend with all the injuries and setbacks and all that sort of thing, as well as Kikuchi not pitching quite where we would want him to be. Obviously Ryu taken out. Yeah, so there's lots of things.
Yeah, and I have to say, Stripling's done a really good job stepping in for Ryu.
Totally.
And the bullpen has been stronger. I think a lot of people thought the bullpen might be an area of weakness for us, and I think our bullpen has kind of stepped up so far. You know, between Simber and Meza, and then Jordan, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, you got to love the Canadian kid who comes out there and just shuts it down. So
yeah. My concern with Jordan is that, as you reflected, that we've had so many one-run games that he can't clearly sustain multiple game after game after game after game after game coming out to do saves. And I think that's the only bit that I'm just slightly concerned, is that the bats haven't fully woken up yet. But I think once that happens, then that will take the pressure off Jordan, and the team will start to roll. I think, as you said about Bo not being quite there, I mean, he's starting to find his rhythm. Obviously got his grand slam, and I think the last 2-3 games he's at least got a hit in. So, you know, he's starting to pull away.
Yeah,
if all of them can do that.
Yeah, you get Teoscar in there behind Vladdy again, and so pitchers have to start pitching to Vladdy again. Yeah. And I think, you know, I think Vladdy's had he's had a bit of a rough go at it. I think the umps have been a little unfair to him lately. If you take a look at sort of, you know, some of the calls that have gone against him, and, you know, he doesn't seem to be one that gets angry often. So when he slammed the bat down the other day, it was, okay. He's frustrated now. But I think you get Teoscar back in there, and pitchers have to start pitching to Vladdy again. I think his bat's gonna turn around really quick.
Yeah. What's your take on Charlie this year? We've seen a few fiery moments from him.
Yeah, you know what? I like fiery Charlie.
Charlie.
I like fiery Charlie. I like the fact that he gets right in there and takes the hit for his players, right? And that he fully acknowledges that that's what he's doing. You know, I don't know if you saw the pictures of him after he got tossed out the other night. playing up on stage with a jazz band.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Right, like, so obviously I took the bullet for Vladdy. We didn't want him to get thrown out and moving on. He just seems to be. I think the first couple of years he was here, people were a little bit cautious.
Well, he had a really rough start, didn't he, in 2019?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a terrible season.
Yeah, and I think people were a little bit cautious too, because he was so different from Gibby, as far as sort of his approach and his mentality with the team and that kind of thing. So, and Gibby was, and still is beloved in Toronto. So, I think people took a while to warm up to Charlie. But yeah, I like Charlie, but I like that Charlie's showing some passion and some fire as well this year, that I think, and I think it's kind of contagious from the rest of the team. It's sort of that passion that you see in the dugout all the time, the dancing and the cheering and the actual hugging and happiness for each other when they're doing well, and kind of that real camaraderie that you're seeing in the dugout. I think that's part of what's kind of fueling Charlie's passion a little bit as well, is that sort of that whole thing that's going on in the clubhouse right now. Yeah,
and it's great to see, isn't it? And I think it's been building it, particularly I think from that 2020 season down in Dunedin, and then through the switch around last year, then coming home into Toronto, and again the rebirthing of the home run jacket and all that sort of stuff. It's great to see. Lots of excitement.
Yeah, I think the experience of the last 2 years of not being at home and being constantly on the road really kind of has that team, that group of players has really gone through something that is very unique. And there's a bond that was created within that team because of what they went through in the last couple of years, that we're now seeing manifesting as this real brotherhood in the dugout, this real affection and fondness for each other that we see in the dugout today.
Yeah, good stuff. Rhonda, it's been brilliant chatting with you. I've really enjoyed it. I love listening to all your stories. I'm going to do my top 10 questions, which I do with everybody that comes on. Just do little quick fire questions, nothing too complicated, just to finish off our time together. Okay. So who are you most excited for in this coming season? Which player are you looking to think, actually, this could be a big year for them?
I'm going to say Tim Meza, just because
you had dinner with him.
Well, I had dinner with him, but I also, he's gone through a lot to get to where he is now. And I'm really happy to see him pitching well after, going through the surgery and the whole having to recuperate and come back. I'm really happy to see how well he's pitching.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a great shout. Your favorite Jays player of all time?
That's a tough one. I'm probably going to go with Devon White.
Okay.
Yeah, I love watching Devon White roam the outfield. The man looked like he took 2 steps and he was wherever he needed to be. Nothing ever looked difficult in the field for him. I love watching him play out in the field. And
I guess some of your earliest memories of watching the Jays would have been around him as well. Yeah, no, absolutely. Who would you have liked to have seen on the Jays roster that has never arrived?
I don't know. Probably James Paxton. I would have loved to have seen them sign Big Maple, so you had a Canadian ace playing on a Canadian team.
Yeah.
I think that would have been interesting.
And that's really important for Canadians, isn't it? I think we forget that, particularly obviously us looking in from the UK, but certainly I can imagine those in the States looking in. Actually, Canadian baseball players are fairly few and far between, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and so to hence, Jordan's excitement at the moment, but I can see your shout on that one. Your favorite ballpark away from Skydome?
Well, I spent a lot of time at Wrigley Field.
Okay.
So love Wrigley. But I have to say probably my favorite to go visit is, I don't know what they're calling it nowadays. It used to be Safeco in Seattle.
Yep.
Whatever they've renamed it as lately.
I should know, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it does look an amazing place because it gets flooded with Jays fans, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a beautiful ballpark. And the times that we've been there, we've gone down for Jays games, and it's a family event when we go down. So my father and my brother's family, we get my nieces involved, and we go and do Seattle up big for a few days.
Yeah.
But it is a beautiful ballpark.
Yeah, very nice.
It's a nice place to watch a ball game.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably my favorite, but Wrigley's a close second.
Okay. Yeah, I've been to Wrigley, but not across to Seattle. Your favorite baseball food that you'd have at a game? What would you go for?
Oh, I'm usually a pizza person.
Yeah, that's all right. And
Yeah.
what drink would you have with your pizza? Any particular faves?
We usually go with a cider.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah. Beer is a little bit too heavy for me, but a nice hard cider.
Yeah.
It's a nice refreshing drink on a hot sunny day with the roof open.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Day game or night game?
I like the day games. I like the day games with the roof open, the sun shining in, the CN tower in the background.
Yeah. It is quite a sight, isn't it? When you're sitting on that third base side of the ground, looking back at the tower. Yeah, very nice too. Your favorite Jays jersey color?
Oh, it's probably got to be the baby blue.
Okay. Have you got one?
I do. Yes, I have I have a red one, a dark blue one, a white one, and a baby blue. Yeah.
All right. So you always got the full set. Not quite. Need to get a gray. Get a road gray somewhere.
I'm not a fan of the gray. Yeah.
That's all right. You're allowed not to like one. It's okay.
Yeah.
And on the back of your baby blue jersey, what number would you go for?
I have left it purposefully blank. So on all of my other jerseys, I have always had a name and number.
Okay.
And as soon as I get that jersey, that player then gets traded to another team. So this time, just to make sure that none of them got traded, I didn't put anything on the back of the jersey.
Okay, fair enough. That's okay. And we sort of answered this question. Roof open or roof closed?
Open
every day.
Absolutely open. Yeah.
And I think people are grateful for the roof because it does mean you get to see a ball game. Yes. And certainly for the guys like us traveling in from the UK, that's quite an important factor that, you pay all that money to go and then it's rained out. So to have a roof is a really useful thing. But all the games I've been to with the roof open, as you say, a sunny day, brilliant backdrop. Yeah. And particularly into the evening, I quite like the sort of late afternoon start where you get a bit of sunshine, then dropping into the nighttime and getting all the lights. It's a beautiful place. It's a great place. Excellent. Rhonda, thank you so much for spending some time. Really appreciate you finding a bit of your day to take out to chat to me. If people want to find you on social media, where can they go?
I am on Twitter at Rhonda.Rathburn. So yeah, that's me. I'm the one that has the little cartoon me in a Blue Jays uniform. So I'm easy to find. So I'm there. I'm also on TikTok. I'm Blue Jays Rhonda on TikTok.
Okay, very good. Do you do a lot of TikTok videos?
I don't right now, but I will be starting soon because I'm going to be getting a new puppy. So my new puppy will become the star of my TikTok videos.
Excellent. Okay, great. If you want to go find Rhonda and her puppy when he or she arrives, that would be brilliant. Rhonda, thanks so much. Lovely to chat with you. I'm sure we'll catch up again fairly shortly. Guys, thank you for listening in. I hope you've enjoyed our time with Rhonda, and we will look forward to catching up with you again on another episode here on Red, White and Blue Jays. Take care. Bye-bye.
The Red, White, and Blue Jays podcast is a production of Blue Jays Fans UK. If you've got a Blue Jays story to share, let us know. Email us at bluejaysfansuk@gmail.com. And follow along on Twitter and Instagram at Blue Jays Fans UK. I'm your announcer, Jim Langton. Thanks for listening.